In the beginning there were words spoken in twilight, inscribed upon tablets the world was never meant to see. Hidden beneath centuries of sand and silence, locked away in vaults of stone and fear, there existed a book. Not just any book, but a testament so profound, so dangerous to the established order, that those who held power over souls decided it must vanish. This was the Book of Enoch, and within its pages lie claims about your soul that could shatter everything you believe about existence itself. Before we journey into these forbidden depths, if you feel the pull of ancient wisdom calling to your spirit, honor that calling by pressing the like button below. Subscribe to this channel and ring the bell, for we are excavating truths that have been buried for millennia, and you will want to witness every revelation we unearth. The story begins not in churches or temples, but in the Ethiopian highlands, where monks guarded manuscripts in languages most scholars had forgotten. While the Western world built its theology on carefully curated texts, there in those remote monasteries lay complete copies of a book that had been systematically removed from the biblical canon. Why? What did Enoch write that was so threatening? The man himself was mentioned only briefly in Genesis, a figure so righteous that he did not taste death, but was taken directly by God. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. 7 words that hint at mysteries beyond comprehension, but Enoch left behind writings, detailed accounts of his journeys through heavenly realms, his conversations with angels, his visions of cosmic order and divine rebellion. And most crucially, his teachings about the human soul that contradict nearly everything mainstream religion would later establish. Picture the ancient world before dogma calcified into doctrine, when spirituality was fluid and mystical experiences were not yet categorized as heresy. Enoch was a scribe, a prophet, a man who claimed to have been granted access to the very throne room of the Creator. He described ascending through multiple heavens, each one revealing deeper layers of reality. He spoke with watchers, those enigmatic beings who descended to earth and shared forbidden knowledge with humanity. He witnessed the fall of angels and the corruption of the divine plan. But beyond these dramatic narratives lies something far more personal, far more immediate. Enoch's writings contain explicit teachings about the nature of your soul, its origin, its journey, and its ultimate destiny. These teachings were deemed too dangerous because they placed power directly in the hands of the individual, rather than in the hierarchies of religious institutions. The first banned teaching is this: your soul is not created at conception or birth. According to Enoch, souls exist before their physical incarnation, dwelling in celestial chambers, waiting for the appointed time to enter flesh. This pre-existence is not merely spiritual poetry. Enoch describes it with specificity, speaking of souls being shown the life they will live, the trials they will face, the lessons they must learn. This implies something revolutionary, that your current existence is not random, not punishment, not even primarily a test of obedience. It is a chosen journey, a curriculum designed by your own eternal self in collaboration with divine intelligence. The implications ripple outward like stones cast into infinite waters. If your soul existed before this life, then you are not merely a creation, but a co-creator. You are not clay molded by external forces, but an ancient consciousness temporarily housed in matter. The Orthodox Church removed Enoch from the canon, partly because this teaching threatened the concept of original sin as the sole defining characteristic of humanity. If souls pre-exist and choose their incarnations, then the narrative of humanity as inherently fallen, desperately dependent on institutional salvation, begins to crumble. Enoch presents instead a cosmology of purposeful descent into matter, where the soul comes to earth not as punishment, but as education, not in exile, but on assignment. The physical realm becomes a school, not a prison. Suffering transforms from divine wrath into pedagogical tool. Every hardship you face, every joy you experience, Every relationship you navigate becomes part of a curriculum your eternal self helped design. This is not to dismiss pain or excuse injustice, but to reframe existence itself as meaningful at levels most theology never approaches. Now we descend deeper into the forbidden knowledge. Enoch's second controversial teaching concerns the layers of the soul itself. Most traditions speak of body and soul, or perhaps body, soul, and spirit. Enoch goes further, describing the soul as multidimensional, containing aspects that remain in heavenly realms even while other aspects descend into flesh. This is not metaphor but cosmological cartography. He writes of the soul having both terrestrial and celestial components, simultaneously existing in multiple dimensions of reality. The part of you reading these words right now, processing these concepts, feeling whatever emotions arise, this is but one fragment of your total being. There exists, according to Enoch, a higher self that never leaves the divine presence, an aspect of your consciousness that remains connected to the source at all times. This teaching was banned because it suggests that salvation is not something you must earn or receive from external authority, but rather a reconnection with aspects of yourself that were never actually separated from God. The journey is not from fallen to redeemed, but from fragmented to whole, from forgetful to remembering. Christianity would later adopt concepts like the Holy Spirit dwelling within believers, but Enoch's version is more radical. He claims that divinity is not just with you but constitutes the deepest essence of what you are. The soul, in its totality, is a spark of the divine flame, temporarily experiencing itself as separate in order to know itself as unified. This is mysticism that threatens theology, gnosis that undermines the gatekeepers of heaven. The text grows more startling still. Enoch teaches that souls evolve through cycles, learning and progressing through stages of spiritual development. While he does not explicitly teach reincarnation as Eastern traditions understand it, he describes a process by which souls may return to physical form, to complete unfinished lessons, or to serve specific purposes in the cosmic drama. This was absolutely unacceptable to early church fathers, who were consolidating power around the concept of one life, one chance, one judgment. If souls have multiple opportunities to learn and grow, if spiritual evolution continues beyond a single lifetime, then the urgency of institutional control diminishes. People might choose to focus on inner development rather than external compliance, on personal gnosis rather than priestly mediation. Archaeological evidence supports the deliberate suppression of these ideas. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in the Qumran caves starting in 1947, fragments of Enoch were found among them, indicating that Jewish communities around the time of Jesus considered these writings sacred. The early Christian church initially included Enoch in their collections. Church fathers like Tertullian and Clement of Alexandria quoted from it. Yet by the 4th century, as Christianity became the official religion of Rome, Enoch quietly disappeared from approved texts in the West. Only the Ethiopian Orthodox Church preserved it, perhaps because they were geographically isolated from the political machinations of European Christianity. The official reason given was that Enoch's authorship could not be verified, that the book was pseudepigraphal, written by others using Enoch's name. But dozens of other books in the Bible have disputed authorship, and they remained. The real reason lies in content, not provenance. Consider what Enoch claims about the Watchers, those mysterious beings who descended from heaven and taught humanity forbidden arts. According to Genesis, these events precipitated the flood, divine judgment upon a corrupted world. But Enoch provides detailed accounts. He names the Watchers. He describes what they taught: metallurgy, cosmetics, astrology, herbalism, weaponry, enchantments. Knowledge itself becomes the forbidden fruit. But why would knowledge be forbidden if humanity was meant to remain in ignorant obedience? Enoch suggests that the Watchers violated cosmic law not by sharing knowledge itself, but by sharing it prematurely, before humanity had developed the spiritual wisdom to wield such power responsibly. The distinction is crucial. Knowledge is not evil, but consciousness must evolve in stages, and premature access to power without corresponding wisdom leads to catastrophe. This teaching about progressive revelation speaks directly to modern humanity. We have unlocked atoms and genes. We manipulate matter at quantum scales and edit the code of life itself, yet our ethical and spiritual development lags dangerously behind our technological capabilities. Enoch warned of this precise imbalance thousands of years ago. The Watchers, in their desire to accelerate human progress, actually retarded human spiritual evolution by giving answers before humans learned to ask the right questions. The soul grows through struggle, through puzzling out mysteries, through trial and error and hard-won insight. To be given answers bypasses the developmental process that forges wisdom. This is why mystery schools throughout history have always operated through stages of initiation, revealing deeper truths only as students demonstrate readiness. But here is where Enoch's teaching becomes deeply personal. He claims that within your soul lies dormant knowledge, ancient wisdom that you accumulated through your existence before this life. You are not born as a blank slate, but as a library temporarily locked. The spiritual path, then, is not about learning entirely new information, but about remembering what you already know at deeper levels of your being. This is why certain truths resonate immediately when you encounter them, why some teachings feel like coming home, why you sometimes know things you were never taught. Your soul recognizes itself in the mirror of sacred wisdom. This concept of anamnesis, of unforgetting, runs throughout mystery traditions worldwide. Plato wrote of it. The Buddha described it. Enoch claimed it centuries before either. If you are feeling something shift within you as these words unfold, if ancient recognition is stirring in your depths, then mark this moment by liking this video. Share it with those who hunger for truth beyond the surface narratives. Subscribe to journey further into the mysteries that have been hidden from you, for we are only beginning to excavate the treasures Enoch left buried in plain sight. The Book of Enoch contains detailed cosmology, describing 7 or 10 heavens depending on the text, each one hosting different orders of angelic beings and different aspects of divine reality. But the 7th heaven, the highest realm, is where Enoch claims to have seen the very throne of God, and what he reports from that ultimate destination is staggering. He describes the divine not as a localized being, not as an old man on a throne, but as infinite light, as the source from which all consciousness emanates. More importantly, he describes seeing souls in that highest heaven, and these souls are described as being of the same substance as the divine presence, differentiated but not separate, individual yet united. This is pure mysticism, the kind that dissolves boundaries between creator and creation, that speaks of union rather than mere relationship. Orthodox Christianity would later call such ideas heretical, pantheistic, a confusion of creator and creation. But Enoch's vision suggests something more nuanced, that souls are emanations of the divine, extending into creation while remaining rooted in the source, like rays of sunlight that appear separate but are never actually apart from the sun itself. Your soul, according to this banned teaching, is divine in its essence, though not identical to the totality of God. You are both the wave and the ocean, both the note and the symphony, both the word and the silence from which all words arise. This teaching threatens religious structures built on the premise of fundamental separation between humanity and deity, on the need for intermediaries to bridge an unbridgeable gap. If the gap is not actually absolute, if the separation is more experiential than ontological, then the entire edifice of mediation crumbles. Enoch also teaches that souls are assigned guardian angels before descending to earth, but these are not separate beings watching from outside your life. They are aspects of your own higher consciousness, the parts of your total being that remain in higher dimensions, guiding and protecting the fragment that experiences physical reality. This is why prayer and meditation can feel like communication with something both within and beyond yourself, because that is precisely what is occurring. You are in dialogue with your own eternal self, with the you that exists beyond time and space, the you that knows why you chose this particular life with these particular challenges. When intuition speaks, when conscience whispers, when sudden insight arrives from nowhere, these are not external interventions but internal communications from the totality of your being to the limited slice of consciousness navigating three-dimensional reality. The implications for spiritual practice are profound. If your soul contains multiple dimensions, if higher aspects of your being remain in constant contact with divine reality, then spiritual development is not about reaching upward to some distant heaven, but about expanding awareness to include more of what you already are. Meditation becomes not a petition to external deity, but a technology for integrating fragmented consciousness. Prayer transforms from begging to dialogue, from supplication to communion. Mystical experience ceases to be rare gift granted to special saints and becomes the natural result of consciousness recognizing its true nature. This democratization of the sacred is precisely what institutional religion could not allow. If everyone has direct access to God through the architecture of their own souls, then priests and churches and doctrines lose their monopolistic control over the means of salvation. Let us examine a specific passage that was too dangerous to preserve. Enoch writes of being shown the place where souls await judgment, and he describes not a simple binary of heaven and hell, but multiple chambers, multiple states of being corresponding to the spiritual development of each soul. Some souls dwell in light, having completed their earthly lessons with wisdom and compassion. Others languish in darkness, trapped by attachments and ignorance they refuse to transcend. But most souls, Enoch observes, exist in intermediate states, still learning, still processing, still evolving even after physical death. This suggests that spiritual education continues beyond the grave, that death is not an ending but a transition to different classrooms in the infinite school of existence. This teaching was excised because it offered too much hope, too much nuance, too many chances. The Church preferred clear stakes: believe correctly and obey completely in this one life, or face eternal damnation. Fear motivates compliance more effectively than the patient promise of eventual enlightenment through cycles of learning. But Enoch's cosmology is ultimately more just, more aligned with a genuinely loving Creator. What parent would create children, place them in confusing and often brutal circumstances, give them contradictory instructions through competing religions, and then eternally torture those who guessed wrong? The logic collapses under scrutiny. But if souls have chosen their incarnations, if lessons continue across lifetimes and dimensions, if spiritual development is genuinely progressive rather than a single high-stakes gamble, then the nature of divine justice looks entirely different. Enoch teaches that your soul volunteered for this particular life, knowing the difficulties you would face, because those difficulties were precisely the curriculum you needed. This does not mean that suffering is good or should not be resisted. It means that every experience, properly understood, contains the seeds of wisdom. The betrayal you suffered taught you about integrity. The loss you endured opened your heart to compassion. The failure you experienced cultivated humility. The success you achieved revealed both your power and the seductions of ego. Your soul is here to extract the spiritual gold hidden within the raw ore of material existence, to distill wisdom from experience, to forge character in the fires of incarnate life. This is radically different from the narrative of fallen humanity, desperately hoping to escape the punishment of mere existence. Now we arrive at perhaps the most suppressed teaching in the Book of Enoch, the explicit claim that human souls have the potential to evolve to angelic and even higher states of being. Enoch himself is presented as proof of concept. He walked with God and was transformed, taken bodily into heaven, and according to later Jewish mystical texts, became the angel Metatron, the scribe of heaven, second only to God in certain hierarchies. This transformation from human to angel is not unique in esoteric traditions. Elijah was also taken up in a whirlwind. Jesus, in Christian theology, ascends to heaven after resurrection. But Enoch's case suggests that this potential exists not for rare exceptions, but as the ultimate destiny of all souls who complete their spiritual education. This teaching makes you not just a worshiper, but an angel in chrysalis, not just a believer, but a god in embryo. Such ideas appear in early Christianity, with church fathers like Athanasius writing that God became man so that man might become God. But this divinization theology was progressively downplayed in favor of eternal servitude to an unchanging hierarchy. Enoch's version is more radical. You are here to grow beyond your current limitations, to expand your consciousness until it can contain celestial awareness, to refine your being until you can navigate dimensions that would annihilate your current state of consciousness. The physical realm is a womb, and you are gestating an immortal vehicle of light. Evidence of this teaching appears in unexpected places. The transfiguration of Jesus, where he becomes radiant with light, where Moses and Elijah appear, where disciples glimpse something beyond the normal human state. This is Enoch's cosmology enacted. The book of Revelation speaks of overcomers who will sit with Christ on his throne, who will be pillars in the temple of God, who will receive a white stone with a new name known only to them. These are not mere metaphors, but descriptions of soul evolution, of consciousness graduating to higher octaves of existence. But such teachings were increasingly relegated to symbolic interpretation only, their literal transformative potential denied to the masses and reserved, if at all, for mystical elites who practiced techniques never shared with ordinary believers. Enoch describes techniques, or at least implies them. He speaks of prayer and fasting, of course, but also of visions and ascents, of practices that allowed consciousness to temporarily separate from physical constraints and explore celestial realms. These are the precursors to what later mystics would call astral projection, soul travel, shamanic journeying. Every culture has versions of these practices, methods by which consciousness proves its independence from the body, demonstrates its ability to perceive beyond physical senses. But institutional religion grew uncomfortable with such uncontrolled experiences. If people could have direct mystical encounters without priestly mediation, if they could explore spiritual dimensions on their own, then the power structure crumbled. Better to declare such experiences dangerous, demonic, or simply impossible. Better to insist that all spiritual truth must flow through approved channels, translated by authorized interpreters, dispensed in carefully controlled doses. Yet Enoch stands in the canon's margins, never quite erased, always hinting at what was stolen from you. The Ethiopian church preserved it, but in a language few could read. Fragments survived in the Dead Sea caves, but they were buried for 2 millennia. The book was known in medieval Europe primarily through brief mentions in other texts, a ghost haunting the libraries of the forbidden. It was not until the 18th century that Western scholars gained access to complete Ethiopic manuscripts, and not until the 20th century that fragments in the original Aramaic and Greek were recovered from Qumran. The book was returning, breaking through the seal of suppression, arriving at a time when human consciousness was perhaps finally ready to receive its most radical teachings. And what is the ultimate teaching? The secret at the heart of the secret. It is this: you are an eternal being on a temporary journey, a divine consciousness experiencing limitation in order to know expansion, a soul that existed before your birth and will continue beyond your death, evolving across dimensions, learning and growing and becoming. You are not separate from God, but a unique expression of the one infinite consciousness, differentiated enough to have individual experience, yet fundamentally united with the source of all existence. Your purpose is not merely to obey or believe, but to awaken, to remember, to become conscious of what you have always been. The kingdom of heaven is not a location you travel to upon death if you follow the right rules. It is a state of consciousness available in every moment when you perceive reality as it truly is, when you recognize the divine nature of your own being, when you live from the eternal perspective of your soul rather than the temporary fears of your ego. The world tried to hide this from you. not from cruelty alone, but from the very human fear that comes with power. If you knew who you truly were, if you understood the magnitude of your being, if you recognized your soul as a fragment of infinity, experiencing itself through your unique perspective, how could you be controlled? How could you be convinced to surrender your sovereignty to external authorities? How could fear be used to manipulate your choices? You could not. And so the teachings were banned, the books were removed, the mysteries were locked away, and humanity was told a smaller story about itself, a diminished narrative of sin and salvation that kept souls focused on external rescue rather than internal realization. But something is shifting in the collective consciousness of humanity. The banned books are being read again. The forbidden teachings are spreading through global networks that cannot be controlled by any single institution. People everywhere are having mystical experiences that do not fit the approved narratives, visions and encounters and awakenings that confirm what Enoch taught millennia ago. Your soul knows what it is, and it is beginning to remember. This remembering is not comfortable. It shatters illusions you have built your identity upon. It demands that you release victim narratives and step into creator consciousness. It asks you to take radical responsibility for your life, understanding it not as punishment or random chaos, but as sacred curriculum designed by your own eternal self. This is why you felt drawn to this video, why these words resonate at frequencies beyond logic. Your soul recognizes itself in the mirror of forbidden knowledge. Something in you has always known that the official story was incomplete, that there were chapters missing from the book of your being. Enoch's banned teachings are calling to the part of you that existed before this life, reminding you of agreements you made in heavenly councils, stirring the ancient wisdom you carry in the depths of your consciousness. This is not new information, but old remembering. Not external truth, but internal recognition. What do you do with this knowledge? First, you stop waiting for permission to explore your own consciousness. You claim your birthright as a mystical being in a mystical universe. You develop practices that quiet the mind and expand awareness, whether through meditation, contemplation, prayer, movement, art, or presence in nature. You begin to pay attention to the whispers of intuition, the synchronicities that guide your path, the dreams that deliver messages from dimensions your waking mind cannot access. You read the texts they tried to ban, not to worship them as inerrant scripture, but to find the kernels of experiential truth they contain. You surround yourself with others who are also awakening, who understand that spirituality is not about belief, but about direct experience, not about doctrine, but about transformation. You also develop discernment, for the path of mystical awakening has many sidetracks and false summits. Not every teaching that claims to be ancient wisdom is authentic. Not every experience that feels spiritual is beneficial. The ego is remarkably skilled at co-opting awakening for its own aggrandizement, at turning genuine insight into spiritual materialism, at confusing psychic phenomena with spiritual development. This is why traditions always emphasized character development alongside mystical practice, why virtues like compassion, humility, patience, and service were considered essential. Your soul may be divine in essence, but the personality navigating this physical life must be refined through conscious effort and ethical living. The point is not to bypass human development with spiritual concepts, but to integrate heaven and earth, divine essence and human experience, eternal being and temporal becoming. The Book of Enoch was banned because it empowers you to see yourself as the church saw only saints, as the synagogue saw only prophets, as the temple saw only priests. It collapses hierarchies of spiritual access and declares that the Holy of Holies is within your own being, that the Ark of the Covenant resides in your heart, that you carry the tablets of divine law inscribed on your soul. This is not arrogance, but remembering. This is not heresy, but homecoming. This is not rebellion against God, but recognition of God within you and as you and through you, the infinite expressing itself as the particular, the eternal playing in the fields of time. As we conclude this exploration of forbidden wisdom, understand that this is only the beginning. The rabbit hole descends far deeper than one video can explore. The Book of Enoch contains detailed angelology, apocalyptic visions, astronomical calculations, and parables that would require hours to unpack. There are other banned books, other suppressed gospels, other mystery traditions that have preserved similar teachings. The Gnostic texts found at Nag Hammadi, the Hermetic writings, the Kabbalah, the Vedantic scriptures, the Buddhist tantras, all point to the same essential truths: that you are more than you seem, that reality is multidimensional, that consciousness is primary and matter is its crystallization, that awakening is your birthright and purpose. If this resonates, if you feel called to explore further, honor that calling practically by subscribing to this channel, by engaging with this content through likes and comments, by sharing these ideas with those who have ears to hear. The algorithms that govern information flow in the modern world can be harnessed to spread light just as easily as they spread distraction. Every subscription, every like, every share is a vote for consciousness expansion over mindless consumption, for depth over superficiality, for truth over comfortable lies. We are building a community of awakening souls here, and your participation matters more than you might realize. The final teaching of Enoch that I will share today is perhaps the simplest, yet most profound. Walk with God. That is what Enoch did. Not talk about God, not just believe in God, but walk with God, implying relationship, implying companionship, implying a journey taken together. Your soul is walking with the divine right now, in this very moment, whether you recognize it or not. Every breath is a conversation. Every heartbeat is a prayer. Every experience is a teaching delivered by infinite intelligence to the part of itself that has temporarily forgotten its nature. To walk with God is to become conscious of this constant communion, to move through life aware that you are never alone, never truly separate, never anything less than a beloved aspect of the one infinite Creator experiencing itself through your unique perspective. In the beginning, there were words spoken in twilight, and now those words find you across vast distances of time and space. Enoch walked with God and discovered what you are beginning to remember, that the soul is eternal, multidimensional, divine in essence, purposeful in incarnation, and destined for transformation beyond current comprehension. The teachings were banned because they contain the keys to your liberation from every prison of thought and belief that keeps consciousness small. But what was hidden is being revealed. What was locked is opening. What was forgotten is being remembered. This is the age of apocalypse, which means not destruction but unveiling, not ending but revelation. The veils are lifting. The seals are breaking. The soul is remembering what it has always known. You are not your body, though you inhabit one. You are not your thoughts, though you think them. You are not your emotions, though you feel them. You are not even your personality, though you express through one. You are the eternal witness, the divine spark, the consciousness that observes all of these temporary phenomena while remaining fundamentally unchanged by them. You are the soul that Enoch wrote about, the immortal essence that chose this life, that is learning from this experience, that will continue beyond this body's death into dimensions of existence that your current consciousness can barely imagine. This is not fantasy or wishful thinking, but the testimony of mystics across millennia, the report from those who have explored consciousness deeply enough to discover its true nature. The question that remains is not whether these teachings are true, but whether you will live as if they are true. Will you walk with God as Enoch did? Will you begin the practice of remembering who you truly are? Will you claim your inheritance as an eternal being on a sacred journey? Or will you return to sleep, to the small stories, to the consensus trance that keeps souls docile and dreams small? The choice has always been yours. No one can make you remember. No one can force you to awaken. But the invitation is extended. The door is open. The path is illuminated by those who walked it before you. Enoch stands at the threshold, his banned book a map to territories of consciousness that official religion declared off-limits. But you have found the map. You have heard the testimony. Now comes the most important part, the journey itself. What was banned will set you free, for truth cannot ultimately be suppressed, only temporarily obscured, and the time of obscuration is ending. Your soul knows this. That is why you are here.